Isabella rose, adjusted the strap of her school bag. As she stepped onto the familiar yellow bus, the cool morning air brushing against her face. She had been taking this route for years, but today, something felt different, though she couldn't quite place why. Daniel Carter, the bus driver, greeted her with his usual warm nod, his eyes carrying the same quiet kindness they always did. "Morning, Isabella," he said in his calm voice. "Morning, Daniel," she replied, offering a polite smile before heading to her usual seat near the window. The ride was like any other. Students chattering, music playing faintly from someone's earbuds, the hum of the engine steady beneath it all. But as they neared school, Isabella suddenly realized she had left her notebook at home, the one with all her important notes for an upcoming test. Frustration flickered across her face as she rummaged through her bag. The moment didn't go unnoticed. "Everything okay?" Daniel asked, as the students started filing out. "I forgot my notebook," she sighed. "Guess I'll have to make do." Without hesitation, Daniel reached toward the dashboard and held up a familiar-looking book. "Found this on the seat earlier. Thought someone might need it." Isabella's eyes widened in surprise. "That's mine." She took it from his hand, a smile spreading across her face. "You're a lifesaver. Just doing my part," he replied with an easy grin. "Good luck with your test." From that moment, something shifted. It was subtle, unspoken, but real. Isabella started noticing things she hadn't before. How Daniel always waited a few extra seconds to make sure the last student got inside their house. How he carried small treats for the younger kids on long rides. How he never seemed to lose patience no matter how chaotic the bus got. She found herself lingering a little longer, when stepping on and off, exchanging small talk that gradually grew into longer conversations. It wasn't forced or awkward. It was natural, effortless. One afternoon, as a light drizzle painted the windows, Isabella sat quietly while most of the other students had already gotten off. She was lost in thought, watching raindrops race down the glass when Daniel's voice broke through. "You okay?" She blinked, turning toward him. "Yeah, just thinking. Dangerous thing to do sometimes," he joked. She laughed softly. "Only if you get lost in the wrong thoughts." He nodded, understanding. "Well, if you ever need a distraction, I know a thing or two about random facts." "Oh yeah." She raised a brow. "Like what?" Daniel tapped the steering wheel. "Did you know buses have something called a kneeling function? It lowers the front, so passengers don't have to step up as high." Isabella tilted her head. "You're telling me the bus can bow?" "Pretty much." She chuckled. "I'll never look at it the same way again." And just like that, a simple conversation became a moment she'd remember. A moment that felt like the beginning of something she hadn't quite named yet. Isabella found herself looking forward to the bus rides in a way she never had before. The morning hellos and evening goodbyes carried a warmth that lingered longer than they should. She wasn't sure when it started, but conversations with Daniel had become the highlight of her day. It wasn't just the way he listened. It was how he remembered. A passing comment about her favorite song led to him casually playing it on the radio one morning. A mention of an upcoming exam turned into a quiet, "You got this," before she stepped off the bus. They were small things, but they weren't insignificant. One afternoon, exhaustion weighed heavily on her. She had stayed up late studying, and by the time the final bell rang, she could barely keep her eyes open. The gentle motion of the bus and the distant hum of conversations lulled her into sleep before she even realized it. The next thing she knew, a soft voice broke through the haze. "Isabella." Her eyes fluttered open to find Daniel standing near her seat, his voice gentle but firm. The bus was empty. "You fell asleep," he said with a small smile. "Didn't want to leave without making sure you got home safe." Heat rushed to her cheeks. I didn't mean to." "It's fine," he assured her. "You looked like you needed the rest." She rubbed her eyes, sitting up. "How long was I out?" "Just long enough to miss your stop." Her heart sank. Wait. Seriously? He nodded toward the window. But don't worry. I figured you wouldn't want to wake up somewhere unfamiliar. Isabella glanced outside, surprised to see her house just a few steps away. He had gone out of his way to drop her off. For a moment she didn't know what to say. No one had ever done something so thoughtful without expecting anything in return. Thank you, she said softly, standing up. Really? Any time. His voice held no hesitation. She hesitated before stepping off, glancing back. Get home safe too, okay? Daniel gave a small nod. Always. That night, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, she found herself replaying the moment over and over. There was something about the way he had waited for her, the way he had spoken her name, so gently. It made her feel safe, seen. The next day, when she got on the bus, she hesitated for only a second before handing him a small cup of coffee. For the extra trip, she said simply. Daniel looked at the cup, then at her. A slow smile spread across his face. Looks like I owe you one now. She shrugged, unable to fight the smile tugging at her lips. Just doing my part. And for the first time, she realized something. What they had was more than just passing conversations. It was something real, something unspoken, but deeply understood. The cold morning air bit at Isabella's cheeks as she stepped onto the bus, her fingers buried deep in her pockets. Winter had arrived in full force, turning the streets into sheets of ice. She moved carefully, but before she could reach her seat, the bus suddenly lurched forward as another student rushed in behind her. Her foot slipped. A gasp left her lips as she braced for the fall, but before she hit the ground, a strong hand caught her arm, steadying her. Easy there, Daniel said, his grip firm yet gentle. Heart pounding, she looked up at him. I almost wiped out. He chuckled. Almost. But not today. She straightened, still flustered. Guess I owe you another coffee. He smirked. At this rate, I'll never have to make my own again. The warmth of his hand lingered even after she sat down. She told herself it was nothing, just a natural reaction to falling, but the way her heart kept racing said otherwise. For the rest of the ride, she found herself glancing at him through the mirror, her thoughts tangled in ways they had never been before. That afternoon, as students piled onto the bus, Isabella hesitated before stepping in. She had overheard something between a few teachers in the hallway, something she wasn't supposed to hear. Daniel had received a job offer, a better-paying one, and he was considering taking it. The words settled in her chest like a weight. She didn't understand why it bothered her so much. He had his own life, his own future. She had no right to feel disappointed. Still, as the bus rumbled forward, she couldn't stop herself from asking. So, any big plans coming up? She asked, keeping her voice light. Daniel glanced at her through the mirror. The rain poured steadily, turning the streets into a blur of reflections. Isabella gripped the straps of her bag, her pulse racing as she stood near the bus, drenched but unmoving. The usual routine felt different today. He was leaving. Daniel leaned against the open bus door, his gaze soft but unreadable. You're gonna get sick standing in the rain like that, he said lightly, though there was something careful in his tone. She swallowed hard. Then tell me to leave. His lips parted slightly, but no words came. The silence between them was louder than any storm. She took a step closer. I don't want you to go. Her voice wavered, but she didn't care. I know it's selfish, and I know you probably have bigger things waiting for you, but this, she gestured between them. This means something, doesn't it? Daniel exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. Isabella. No, she shook her head, cutting him off. You don't get to walk away pretending this was just another bus route. You don't get to leave like none of this mattered. His jaw tightened, eyes searching hers for something unspoken. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, it mattered. Relief flooded her, but so did frustration. Then why leave? Daniel hesitated. then sighed. Because I thought it was the right thing to do. For who, she challenged. He let out a quiet chuckle, shaking his head. For you? For me? I don't know. A car honked in the distance, but neither of them moved. The air between them crackled, heavy with the weight of everything unsaid. Finally, Daniel spoke again, softer this time. I wasn't sure if staying was even an option. She took a deep breath. It is. For the first time in days, he smiled, really smiled. And just like that, something shifted. The decision had already been made. A week later, the bus was the same, the route unchanged, but the atmosphere was different. As Isabella stepped on, Daniel met her gaze with a knowing look. Morning, he said, the warmth in his voice unmistakable. Morning, she replied, unable to hide the grin spreading across her face. As she walked to her seat, the rain started again, pattering gently against the windows. But this time, it didn't feel sad. It felt like a new beginning.